The galaxy had abandoned the colony. For decades, the humans on the edge of known space had sent countless signals for aid. Each plea was met with silence. Reports of attacks, of alien incursions, of starving civilians, all were ignored by the governing councils, who had other priorities in the thriving heart of the galaxy. Messages were logged and filed and then forgotten. The colony learned to fend for itself, to survive with the scant resources they had. But the warning lights on their sensors never stopped blinking. Every passing day, the colony lived under threat. Every new transmission from alien scouts brought dread, because the galaxy had made one thing painfully clear: help would not come. Now, after years of neglect, the consequence of that inaction had arrived. Alien fleets surrounded the colony. Massive warships hovered just beyond the atmosphere, like predators circling prey. Sensors screamed warnings. Red lights flashed endlessly on every console. Alarms blared so loudly that the panic-stricken civilians in the streets trembled at the noise. In the command center, officers ran back and forth, issuing frantic orders to teams who were already at their limits. Engines sputtered under the strain of hastily prepared emergency maneuvers. Weapon systems failed intermittently, some refusing to engage at all. Panic hung thick in the air, mixing with the sharp scent of overheated electronics and the nervous sweat of exhausted humans. Children screamed as families scrambled toward shelters. Parents clutched them tightly, pushing through corridors jammed with civilians. Every step carried the weight of desperation. One officer cried out over the comms, trying to rally scattered squads to defend the colony's perimeter. Another engineer cursed under his breath as a shield generator overheated for the third time in minutes. No one had slept properly for days, but adrenaline kept them moving. Hope was a fragile thing, nearly gone. For many, this would be their last day. They could feel it in the trembling in their hearts, the beads of sweat running down their foreheads, the cold pit in their stomachs. They were left to die. But then, something impossible appeared on the long-range scanners. Faint blips at first, like the reflection of distant stars. Then more blips, clearly moving with intent. Officers froze, staring at the screens in disbelief. Ships were approaching the colony, coming out of the darkness of space, moving deliberately with calm precision. Not one, not two, but dozens of vessels, sleek, massive, glowing faintly under their own engines, emerged from the void. Their hulls reflected the light of the distant star, polished and deliberate. The humans in the command center whispered in awe, disbelief breaking through the panic. They came, someone murmured, voice trembling with hope. Alien commanders, observing from their massive ships, laughed at first. Humans? This is a decoy, a distraction, they said, arrogance dripping from every syllable. They had assumed the colony's defenses were weak, that their slow, scattered humans would crumble under pressure. Their confidence was absolute. Yet, even as they laughed, sensors on their ships began to twitch. Something was different about these approaching vessels. Their formation was precise, their movement deliberate. The aliens tried to dismiss the feeling, to claim it was nothing, but doubt crept into their minds. The humans were not panicking. They were not scrambling. They were moving with a purpose, calm and undeniable. Inside the command center, Commander Leona Hayes took a deep breath, feeling her heart pound in rhythm with the flashing sensors. She had prepared for years to die under such an attack, and yet her mind refused to accept it now. Something in those approaching ships radiated authority, precision, discipline. The sheer calm in their motion told her what she had not dared to hope. Humanity had not been abandoned after all. Someone had come. Someone had heard. And the first message they carried was clear even before a single word had been broadcast. We are with you. The alien fleet moved closer, weapon systems powered and ready. Officers barked orders, pointing at the approaching ships. Prepare torpedoes. Fire at will. They commanded, certain the humans would panic, certain that their overwhelming strength would crush the colony in minutes. And yet, as their long-range scanners tracked the approaching fleet, they noticed anomalies. Ships appeared where none should exist. Engines pulsed silently in positions that defied logic. Communications began to fail, static crackling over channels. The aliens tried to laugh again, but it sounded hollow even to themselves. Something was happening that they could not control. Something precise, patient, unstoppable, and human. Inside the human warships, officers moved with perfect synchronization. Pilots adjusted trajectories without a word. Weapons officers prepared systems silently, following protocols drilled into them for years. Engineers monitored every reading, ensuring power flow was perfect, shields optimal, engines silent but deadly. Decoy drones deployed to confuse enemy sensors, invisible yet effective. Every subtle action, every quiet movement, sent ripples of confusion and dread through the alien fleet. The humans were not firing yet, but every sensor blip, every calculated maneuver communicated dominance. The colony watched through monitors, hearts racing. Hope was rising like a tide after years of drought. The alien fleet tried to strike preemptively. A salvo of plasma torpedoes launched toward the largest human vessel. Officers smiled, confident victory was near. But the torpedoes passed through empty space as shields silently deflected them. Cloaked corvettes moved in ways sensors could not track. Decoy drones guided the aliens into blind spots, their own systems betraying them. The humans struck without striking. They dominated without engaging fully. The alien commanders stared at their monitors, disbelief etched into every feature. Systems failed. Pilots panicked. Pride gave way to fear. Every arrogant assumption about human weakness had been destroyed before battle even began. Commander Hayes felt tears prick her eyes. The humans had come not only to defend, but to declare that they would never abandon those who needed them. She saw civilians clinging together in the shelter, eyes wide as they watched the approaching fleet. Children whispered, "It's them. It's really them." Officers exchanged nods, understanding that what they were witnessing was far more than a rescue. It was the proof that humanity's discipline, precision, and moral resolve had arrived in the galaxy's darkest moment. Captain Aaron Vale's voice echoed over the intercom of the human fleet, calm, steady, and commanding. "Observe, predict, intervene only when necessary. Let hesitation rule them. Let every error break them. Patience is our weapon. Discipline is our shield." Pilots adjusted without question. Engineers monitored power flow. Cloaked corvettes slipped into positions unseen, and decoy drones maneuvered the enemy. Every subtle movement was a lesson, every quiet action a demonstration. The aliens had assumed humanity was weak. They had assumed abandonment meant helplessness. They had been wrong. Humanity had arrived, precise, patient, and unstoppable. Back at the colony, civilians exhaled in awe. Hope sparked like wildfire. Children clutched each other, whispering prayers. Families pressed close. Officers stood straighter, their fear tempered by the calm that emanated from the approaching fleet. They watched as the humans demonstrated dominance not through firepower, but through precision, discipline, and strategy. The aliens had trespassed, believing the colony to be defenseless. Now they realized they had walked into a trap of inevitability. The alien commanders tried to recover their composure. Attack! Strike them down before they reached the colony. They barked orders, but their crews could not respond. Engines faltered. Weapons jammed. Communications failed. Panic spread like wildfire through the alien fleet. Confidence had turned to terror. Pride had turned to despair. Every system they relied upon betrayed them. Every subtle human interference reinforced their failure. The humans had not fired a single full-strength weapon yet, and already the tide had turned. From the bridge of the human flagship, Vale watched the alien fleet falter. His eyes scanned every movement, every hesitation, every panic-stricken reaction. He did not celebrate. Victory was not yet complete. But the first message had already been delivered. Humanity had arrived. Humanity had declared to the galaxy, "We are with you." The galaxy, long silent in its abandonment of the weak, would remember this day. Those left to die were no longer alone. Humans had arrived, precise, disciplined, unstoppable, and full of moral clarity. The alien fleet would retreat. The colony would survive. And every observer, every surviving soul in the void, would learn the first truth of humanity's arrival. Those who are patient, precise, and united can never be abandoned, cannot be ignored, and will always rise to defend the helpless. The void itself seemed to shift with the presence of the fleet. Engines glowed silently. Hulls reflected starlight like polished steel mirrors. Every human vessel moved with purpose. Every subtle maneuver was a statement. Every eye on the colony, every monitor on the ships, every civilian watching from shelters knew. The humans had come, and nothing in the galaxy would ever forget this arrival. The colony trembled under the shadow of the alien fleet, but now, a new pulse of hope surged through the streets and command centers. Humans had arrived, but the danger was far from over. Alien ships swarmed above, weapons primed, shields humming with destructive energy. Yet every movement they made was carefully observed by the human fleet, calm and deliberate, as though the aliens were insects unaware of the hand that would crush them. Commander Leona Hayes wiped sweat from her brow, her eyes fixed on the main display. Civilians scrambled through corridors, clutching their children, their eyes wide with fear and awe. Every heart in the colony felt the same mix of terror and hope, a feeling they had not dared to experience for years. The humans in the fleet moved like a single organism. Ships glided silently through the void, engines humming a low, controlled rhythm. Cloaked corvettes slipped into hidden positions, invisible to alien sensors. Decoy drones darted between the alien vessels, creating phantom targets and forcing enemy formations into disarray. Pilots followed pre-calculated patterns, every maneuver precise, every action designed to guide, not destroy. Yet the chaos that followed was devastating. Alien weapons fired blindly, misfiring, striking empty space or colliding with each other. Engines faltered at critical moments. Officers cursed over comm channels, realizing that the humans were manipulating them without even engaging fully. Inside the colony, the civilians felt the tension in every breath. Families huddled together, children trembling but clutching each other tightly. Parents whispered prayers, some silently, some aloud, hoping that the humans could protect them. Engineers scrambled to maintain emergency power for shields, running from console to console, their hands shaking. Officers barked orders to remaining defense teams, but even they paused, mesmerized by the quiet authority radiating from the human fleet. Every display screen, every sensor reading told the same story. The humans were not panicked. They were deliberate. They were unstoppable. And they were here for them. Captain Aaron Vale's voice echoed across the fleet's communication channels. Calm, commanding, and steady. Observe, predict, do not rush. Let hesitation break them. Every misstep is ours. Move only when necessary. Discipline and patience are stronger than fury. Every human officer, every pilot, every engineer knew their role perfectly. There was no confusion, no fear, no rash action. Every motion was part of a greater strategy, a lesson in precision, patience, and moral clarity. The humans had become more than soldiers. They had become a living proof of inevitability. The alien commanders, once confident, now struggled to maintain composure. Their ships were in constant disruption. Pilots panicked as their instruments showed targets appearing where none should exist. Shields failed unexpectedly. Engines flared then died, and communications sputtered. Officers shouted orders that could not be executed. Pride and arrogance, once solid and unshakable, crumbled into fear and disbelief. They had believed this colony abandoned and weak. They had assumed that humans left alone would be easy prey. Now they realized their mistake, but realization came too late. Every subtle movement of the human fleet dismantled their confidence piece by piece. In the colony, Hayes watched as cloaked corvettes moved unseen, decoy drones guided alien ships into traps, and the human fleet executed maneuvers of perfect coordination. Tears streamed down the cheeks of officers who had expected death, and yet felt awe at the skill and discipline of their saviors. Civilians whispered quietly to one another, repeating words they had not dared speak in years. "We will survive. They are with us. Humanity is here. Every heart beat faster with hope, but also with the recognition that the battle had only begun. The alien fleet remained a threat, and any error could still be catastrophic. The human fleet began subtle attacks. Not full strength, not unnecessary destruction, but precise strikes at critical systems. Alien engines faltered in moments that seemed calculated to maximize chaos. Weapons misfired, colliding into each other, while pilots fought to regain control of spinning ships. Officers cursed and panicked, realizing their advanced technology was being undone without direct confrontation. The humans had arrived to protect the weak, and their methods were as intelligent as they were terrifying. Every subtle action amplified the psychological pressure on the aliens. At the colony's command center, a young engineer whispered, "They are perfect. Every move, every decision, precise." Her voice trembled with a mix of fear and admiration. Another officer nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "We thought we were alone, abandoned, forgotten. But they came. They came for us." Commander Hayes felt the weight of relief and awe pressing down on her chest. She had prepared for death countless times. Now she realized that humanity had arrived not just to defend, but to restore hope. Every action of the fleet sent the same message. No one is left behind. We will be with you. The alien fleet tried desperately to regain control. Commands were shouted, orders repeated, maneuvers executed in panic. Yet nothing worked. Their weapons jammed at the wrong time. Engines failed mid-battle. Shields collapsed in critical moments. Every assumption about human weakness had been shattered. Pride, arrogance, and confidence had transformed into fear, chaos, and despair. And the humans had not yet struck with full force. Their calm, calculated precision was enough. The colony could see the truth of it. Humans were unstoppable when united, disciplined, and motivated by moral clarity. Captain Vale issued further commands over the fleet. Predict, observe, strike only when necessary. Let hesitation dominate. Let their arrogance become their undoing. Pilots adjusted formation. Cloaked corvettes flanked enemy vessels. Decoy drones guided enemies into blind spots. Engineers maintained perfect shields and energy distribution. Every subtle action reinforced dominance, leaving the alien fleet in disarray, unable to comprehend the force they faced. Humans had arrived to protect the weak, and they had done so without losing patience, without reckless action, without panicking. Civilians, officers, and children watched the unfolding events in awe. The humans demonstrated that saving lives required precision, discipline, and moral courage more than firepower. Every subtle interference, every calculated maneuver, every deliberate movement reminded the galaxy that humans were not to be underestimated. Those left to die had found salvation, not in luck, not in brute force, but in the patient, disciplined, unstoppable will of their own species. The alien fleet faltered further. Pilots spun helplessly, engines sputtered, weapons jammed repeatedly. Officers cursed and shouted, but every effort failed. The humans had anticipated every move, countered every tactic, and guided the aliens into inevitable failure. Every subtle maneuver of the human fleet taught a lesson. Precision and moral clarity could dominate where numbers and technology could not. In the colony, civilians pressed together, some crying quietly, some staring in disbelief at the screens. Commander Hayes exhaled slowly, tears streaming down her face. For the first time in years, hope had returned. Humanity had arrived, not only to defend, but to declare a philosophy. No one is ever truly abandoned when the human race is willing to act. The first message had already reached every heart. We are with you. Even the alien commanders recognized the truth of it. They had trespassed into human space expecting weakness, expecting surrender. Instead, they faced precision, patience, and moral clarity that they could neither anticipate nor overcome. Panic, despair, and humiliation spread through their ranks. The humans had arrived, calm and unstoppable, and the lesson was clear. Underestimating humans was a fatal error. Cloaked corvettes slipped behind enemy ships, Decoy drones guided the aliens into traps, and precise, calculated strikes crippled engines and weapons without full engagement. Every move was a statement. Every subtle interference reminded the galaxy that the humans had come to defend, and they would not fail. Captain Vale observed silently, calm, precise, emotional yet controlled, knowing that the colony would survive not just through skill, but through the moral certainty that defined human resolve. The colony, once abandoned, now felt the weight of protection. Civilians whispered, "We are not alone." They came. They kept their promise. Officers felt pride swell in their chests. Children clutched hands and stared wide-eyed at the monitors, witnessing the arrival of heroes they could never fully know. Humanity had arrived, and the aliens could only watch in confusion, fear, and disbelief. The humans had demonstrated a truth more powerful than any weapon. Precision, patience, and moral clarity are unstoppable. The void seemed alive with the presence of the human fleet. Every ship, every subtle maneuver, every controlled action radiated calm authority. The aliens realized, too late, that no colony could be abandoned as long as humans were willing to act with discipline, precision, and moral clarity. Every moment of hesitation, every misstep, every failed weapon was a testament to the humans' arrival. Those left to die now found salvation. The galaxy would remember this day. Humanity had returned to claim its moral and strategic place in the stars. The alien fleet had been confident. They had believed the humans scattered and weak, abandoned by the galaxy, left to perish alone in the outer void. Yet now, everything they had assumed about humanity was unraveling before their very eyes. Ships moved with deliberate precision, cloaked vessels appeared where none should exist, and decoy drones wove patterns of chaos that forced the alien formations into confusion. Pilots shouted in panic, officers cursed their misfiring weapons, and engineers ran from console to console trying to salvage systems that no longer obeyed their commands. Every calculated move of the human fleet was turning arrogance into terror. Inside the colony, civilians watched the unfolding chaos on the monitors with disbelief and awe. Children pressed their faces to the screens, wide-eyed, gripping the hands of parents who whispered trembling words of hope. Parents held their children tightly, hearts pounding, every moment feeling like an eternity. Officers and engineers felt it too, hope returning, fragile but undeniable. They had prepared for death for years, and yet now salvation had arrived. Humans had come not to simply fight, they had come to teach a lesson. Every subtle movement of the fleet, every maneuver, every interference in alien systems carried the same message. We do not abandon those in need. Humanity is here, precise, unstoppable, and moral. Captain Aaron Vale observed every detail from the bridge of the flagship. His eyes flicked from the displays to the communications channels and back, calm, precise, calculating. He did not shout. He did not panic. Every order he gave was measured, deliberate, and designed to maximize effect while minimizing unnecessary destruction. Cloaked corvettes slipped silently behind enemy lines, drones guided alien ships into traps, and subtle manipulations of sensor readings caused panic and error across the alien fleet. Every human crew member knew their role perfectly, as if the fleet itself were a single living organism. The aliens tried to strike back. Plasma cannons fired in concentrated salvos, targeting what they assumed was the human flagship. Torpedoes arced through space with deadly intent, but the humans had predicted every trajectory. Shields absorbed some, engines maneuvered around others, and decoy drones drew the rest into empty voids. The aliens screamed in confusion. Weapons misfired. Engines flared and died. Ships collided in moments that seemed almost scripted by the humans. Every desperate move the aliens made only reinforced their own failure. Within the colony, emotions ran high. Officers wiped tears from their eyes, realizing for the first time in years that they would not die alone. Civilians whispered quietly, almost reverently, "They are here." They kept their promise. Humanity has come for us. Children clung to their parents, gazing at the screens, feeling awe, fear, and wonder all at once. Engineers and soldiers who had long accepted abandonment now felt the weight of salvation pressing down on them. Every subtle human maneuver was more than strategy, it was a moral declaration. Humanity would not allow weakness to be destroyed. Humanity had arrived, and no alien arrogance could undo that fact. The aliens' confidence crumbled. Their fleet had entered human space expecting an easy victory, only to find chaos and precision they could not comprehend. Pilots panicked as sensors failed and targets appeared where none should exist. Weapons jammed mid-firing sequence. Shields collapsed unpredictably. Engineers cursed as systems malfunctioned in every critical moment. Commanders shouted, but orders were meaningless. Pride and arrogance had become terror and confusion. Every subtle movement of the human fleet reinforced the lesson. Underestimating humans was a fatal mistake. In the colony, Commander Hayes felt a tight knot in her chest loosen slightly. Hope, fragile and almost forgotten, had returned. Every civilian and soldier she watched was touched by awe. Families pressed together. Officers held back tears, faces glowing in the flickering light of emergency monitors. Children whispered names they had heard from legends, not knowing these humans would save them with precise, calm action. Even those who had spent their lives preparing for the worst could not hide their admiration. Humanity had arrived. They were precise. They were unstoppable. They were moral. And they would protect the weak. The human fleet continued its methodical advance. Cloaked ships struck at vital systems without alerting the aliens. Decoy drones created phantom targets that sent enemy formations spiraling into panic. Every subtle interference dismantled the aliens' confidence further. Pilots on the human side moved with disciplined perfection, as if guided by instinct and experience combined. Every movement sent a message across space. Humans were not merely defending, they were asserting authority, precision, and moral clarity across the void. Alien officers were desperate. They realized too late that raw firepower was insufficient. Every calculated human maneuver caused cascading errors throughout their ranks. Engines failed, shields faltered, weapons misfired. Panic spread like wildfire. Every moment of hesitation became an opportunity for humans to strike, even without firing full-strength weapons. The aliens had trespassed into human space believing abandonment equaled weakness. They had been wrong. Every subtle move of the human fleet demonstrated that abandonment had only strengthened their resolve, honed their precision, and focused their moral clarity. Inside the colony, civilians clutched each other tighter. Children's wide eyes were mirrors of disbelief and awe. Parents whispered thanks to a fleet they could never fully understand. Engineers adjusted last-minute power flows, knowing the humans were controlling the battlefield with subtlety and precision. Officers stood straighter, their fear tempered by the quiet authority radiating from the approaching ships. Every subtle movement was a lesson in patience. Every silent maneuver a demonstration of skill. Humanity was teaching not only the aliens, but every observer in the galaxy, the power of discipline and moral resolve. Captain Vale observed the alien panic with calm satisfaction. He did not celebrate, but he allowed himself a brief acknowledgement of the truth. The humans had arrived not only to defend, but to assert that abandonment would never define them. The colony would survive. The weak would not be left behind. Every subtle maneuver, every precision strike, every cloaked intervention was a statement. Humans act not out of fear, not out of vengeance, but out of moral clarity, discipline, and precision. The aliens had walked into the void assuming weakness, and they would leave learning that humans are unstoppable when united, disciplined, and determined. The aliens faltered further. Shields flickered, engines sputtered, weapons jammed repeatedly. Panic consumed their officers, and pilots spun helplessly through space. Every miscalculation, every delayed command was exploited by the human fleet without a single moment of wasted effort. The humans had arrived to protect the colony, to ensure survival, and to demonstrate that moral clarity and precision could dominate the chaos of war. Every subtle move was a message, and the aliens could no longer ignore it. In the colony, hope reached every corner. Families clung together, tears rolling down faces. Civilians whispered words of gratitude they had not dared speak in years. Officers saluted silently. Children stared, wide-eyed, knowing in their hearts that the humans who had come would protect them. Humanity had arrived, calm, disciplined, unstoppable, and moral. Those left to die were no longer abandoned. The galaxy would remember this day, and the first lesson of humanity's arrival was clear. Precision, patience, and moral clarity are stronger than firepower, numbers, or arrogance. Even the alien commanders understood the truth, though they refused to acknowledge it aloud. They had trespassed into human space expecting surrender. Instead, they faced calculation, discipline, and moral dominance that they could not match. Panic replaced pride, confusion replaced arrogance, and despair replaced certainty. Every subtle action of the humans dismantled their confidence and reshaped the battle entirely without full engagement. Humanity had arrived to defend the weak, and their arrival had already changed the course of history. The human fleet moved like one living entity. Every ship, every crew member, every maneuver a testament to unity and purpose. The aliens could not comprehend it, could not stop it, and could not survive its precision. The colony's civilians whispered, "We are not alone. Humanity is here." Officers and soldiers nodded silently, tears glistening in their eyes. Children clung to their parents, feeling awe, hope, and pride all at once. Humanity had come not just to save them, but to declare that those left to die would never be truly abandoned. Every subtle move, every calculated interference, every silent, precise maneuver of the human fleet carried the same message. We are with you, always. The void itself seemed to shift under the presence of the human fleet. Engines glowed silently. Hulls reflected starlight like mirrors of hope. Every subtle maneuver radiated authority and precision. The aliens realized, too late, that no colony could be left behind as long as humans were willing to act with moral clarity, discipline, and perfect coordination. Every hesitation, every misstep, every failed weapon was another confirmation of the humans' inevitability. Those left to die now found salvation, and the galaxy would never forget the lesson humanity had delivered. The alien fleet reeled under the pressure of human precision. Every ship, every maneuver, every subtle interference from the human fleet created a chaos that the aliens could not control. Their confidence, once absolute, was replaced by confusion and fear. Officers barked orders, their voices rising in panic, but their commands went unanswered as systems faltered in critical moments. Engines sputtered, shields blinked and died, weapons jammed mid-firing sequence, and long-range scanners were thrown into disarray. Every assumption they had made about human weakness shattered like glass in the void. Inside the colony, the atmosphere was a mix of awe, terror, and hope. Families huddled together in shelters, eyes glued to the monitors. Children clutched each other tightly, whispering prayers they had almost forgotten. Parents pressed close, whispering reassurances that sounded fragile even to themselves. Officers moved through corridors, some shouting orders, some silently observing, their hearts racing. Engineers scrambled to maintain power to shields and emergency systems, knowing that every human maneuver outside would dictate whether their world survived or perished. Every eye in the command center was fixed on the approaching fleet, and every mind felt the gravity of what was unfolding. Salvation had arrived, but danger was far from over. Captain Aaron Vale's voice cut through the tension like a calm wind through a storm. Observe, predict, let hesitation break them. Every error they make strengthens us. We do not rush. We do not panic. We act with discipline, with precision, with moral clarity. Every human officer, every pilot, every engineer responded without question. Ships glided through the void like a single entity, cloaked vessels striking unseen, decoy drones guiding enemies into traps, and subtle manipulations of sensor readings causing chaos in alien ranks. It was not a battle fought with brute force alone. It was a battle fought with intellect, patience, and moral certainty. The aliens tried desperately to regain control. They fired plasma salvos, torpedoes arced toward human ships, and formations shifted in frantic attempts to regain dominance. But each move played directly into the humans' hands. Shields absorbed attacks in perfect timing, Engines maneuvered unpredictably, and decoy drones misled entire squadrons into collisions and dead space. Panic spread across the alien fleet. Weapons failed at critical moments. Engines shut down. Communication lines sparked and died. Officers cursed and shouted, but nothing worked. Every move the aliens made only deepened their failure. Every assumption about human weakness had been obliterated by calm, precise, and patient strategy. Within the colony, the civilians felt the shift. Where there had been despair, there was now awe. Children whispered, "They are here. They saved us." Parents pressed their children closer, tears streaking their faces. Officers stood straighter, some wiping sweat and tears from their eyes, realizing for the first time in years that they would not die alone. Hope, fragile and delicate, bloomed inside every heart, fueled by the quiet power of the humans outside. Engineers monitored shields and power systems, ensuring survival, knowing that the humans' subtle actions were guiding the outcome of the entire battle. Every flicker of light, every subtle blip on the scanners, reinforced the truth. Humans had arrived, precise, unstoppable, and moral. The alien fleet faltered further. Pilots spun helplessly as sensors showed targets appearing where none should exist. Weapons jammed mid-firing. Engines failed in the midst of maneuvers. Officers shouted, cursed, and panicked, realizing their most confident strategies had become traps of their own making. Their arrogance, once solid and unshakable, had dissolved into fear, confusion, and despair. Every subtle movement of the human fleet, executed with perfect timing and moral clarity, dismantled the alien fleet's confidence without a single full-strength attack. The humans had arrived not only to defend, but to dominate with intellect, patience, and moral resolve. Commander Hayes watched silently from the command center. Her heart pounded, yet she felt a calm strength growing inside her chest. Years of fear, uncertainty, and despair were being replaced with awe and gratitude. Every civilian in the shelter felt it. Every officer, every engineer, every child knew it. Humanity had arrived. They were precise. They were disciplined. They were moral. They would protect the weak. The alien fleet had underestimated them, and that mistake was irreversible. The human fleet executed subtle, devastating maneuvers. Cloaked corvettes slipped behind enemy lines, decoy drones guided alien ships into blind spots, and targeted disruptions caused engines and weapons to fail in sequence. Every human pilot and officer acted with calm precision, every movement calculated to maximize effect while minimizing unnecessary destruction. The alien systems failed, their formations collapsed, and every attempt at retaliation crumbled under invisible pressure. Every subtle action of the human fleet was a declaration. We are here. We are precise. We are unstoppable. And we will protect the weak. Within the colony, civilians whispered prayers and expressions of hope. Children clutched their parents, wide-eyed and trembling. Officers and engineers exchanged silent nods, understanding that what they witnessed was not just a military maneuver, but a lesson in discipline, precision, and moral clarity. Every subtle move of the human fleet conveyed the message that abandonment was no longer a fate that could touch them. The humans had arrived. They had brought salvation. They had brought certainty. The alien fleet's panic intensified. Weapons misfired repeatedly. Engines failed at the worst possible moments. Communication systems sputtered, throwing the command structure into chaos. Officers barked orders that could not be executed. Pride gave way to terror. Confidence dissolved into confusion. Every subtle movement of the human fleet dismantled their arrogance and shattered their assumptions. They had trespassed into human space, believing the colony weak and abandoned. They had been catastrophically wrong. Every subtle maneuver, every calculated interference, every precise and moral action of the human fleet left the aliens powerless to respond effectively. Civilians pressed closer in their shelters, tears streaking their faces, hearts pounding. Officers exhaled slowly, holding back emotions that threatened to overwhelm them. Children whispered words of awe and gratitude, repeating names they did not fully understand. Engineers continued their work with quiet determination, their fingers steady, their eyes fixed on monitors. They knew that the humans outside were controlling the battle with perfect coordination. The alien fleet's fear and chaos were not random. They were consequences of disciplined, moral, precise action. Humanity had arrived not just to defend, but to teach a lesson that the galaxy would never forget. Captain Vale watched silently from the bridge of the flagship. His calm demeanor masked the emotion in his chest. The humans had arrived, unstoppable, disciplined, precise, and moral. The colony was safe for now because humanity refused to leave anyone behind. Every subtle interference, every cloaked maneuver, every calculated disruption was a statement. Those left to die are never truly abandoned. We are here. We are with you. The void seemed to pulse with the presence of the fleet. Every hull reflected starlight. Every engine glowed with silent power. The aliens had trespassed, assuming abandonment would equal weakness. Instead, they faced inevitability, precision, and moral certainty that they could neither comprehend nor resist. Even as the battle continued, hope surged across the colony. Families whispered words of gratitude, officers and engineers felt pride and awe, and children pressed against their parents, realizing for the first time in years that humans had come for them. Every subtle action by the human fleet reinforced the truth. Discipline, precision, and moral clarity could dominate the chaos of war, protect the weak, and ensure survival. The aliens could panic, they could fail, but they could not undo the message humanity had delivered. We are with you, always. The alien fleet continued to falter, confusion spreading like wildfire among its ranks. Ships spun uncontrollably, weapons misfired, and engines faltered in the void. Commanders shouted orders that could not be executed. Every assumption they had made about human weakness had been shattered in an instant. They had expected a scattered, weak colony and a simple victory. Instead, they faced precision, patience, and moral clarity that they could not comprehend, and every misstep drove them deeper into chaos. Inside the colony, civilians huddled together, hearts pounding. Families pressed tightly against each other, children trembling in fear and awe, eyes wide as monitors displayed the calm and unstoppable human fleet outside. Every movement of the fleet, every cloaked corvette slipping through enemy lines, every subtle disruption of alien sensors sent a single message. We are here. We will protect you. Officers wiped tears from their eyes, knowing that hope had returned in a way they had not dared imagine. Engineers ran through the corridors, adjusting emergency systems and shields, hands shaking but minds focused. They had survived this long, abandoned by the galaxy. But now salvation was here, and every subtle human action reinforced the truth that the weak would not be left behind. Captain Aaron Vale observed from the flagship bridge, calm yet aware of the immense responsibility resting on his shoulders. Every maneuver of the human fleet was deliberate, precise, and emotionally weighted. Cloaked ships intercepted alien patrols without being seen, decoy drones led enemy formations into traps, and subtle energy manipulations disrupted critical systems. Every move was executed with patience, intelligence, and moral clarity. Vale's voice carried calmly over the communication channels. Do not strike unnecessarily. Let hesitation control them. Observe, predict, and act with discipline. Every error they make strengthens us. The alien commanders were desperate, fear etched into every line of their faces. Weapons misfired repeatedly. Engines stalled mid-flight. Shields flickered and failed at critical moments. Pilots screamed into their comms, trying to understand why their superior technology and numbers were being undone by subtle, almost invisible maneuvers. Pride and arrogance, once absolute, had crumbled. Every calculated action of the human fleet dismantled the alien fleet's confidence without ever raising a single full-strength salvo. The humans had come not merely to defend. They had come to demonstrate the unstoppable force of discipline, precision, and moral clarity. Within the colony, civilians felt hope swell in their hearts. Parents whispered prayers, children clung to their loved ones, and officers pressed their lips together, holding back emotions that threatened to overwhelm them. Engineers worked tirelessly, ensuring that every shield and energy conduit held steady, understanding that even the smallest adjustment could mean survival. Every blip on the scanners, every subtle interference outside, every calculated move of the fleet reinforced a simple but powerful truth. Humans would not abandon those in need. Humanity had arrived, precise, unstoppable, and moral. The alien fleet tried to regroup, forming tighter formations, adjusting attack vectors, and attempting coordinated strikes. But the human fleet anticipated every move. Cloaked corvettes slipped behind enemy lines, decoy drones forced alien vessels into blind spots, and subtle energy pulses disrupted engines and weapons. Panic spread further, infecting every pilot and officer. Communications became chaotic, commands went unheeded, and their once pristine formations dissolved into disorder. Every subtle action by the humans magnified their fear, turning arrogance into despair. Commander Hayes stood in the colony's command center, eyes fixed on the screens, heart racing with a mix of fear and awe. Tears streamed down her face as she watched civilians hold their breath, knowing that humanity had come to save them. The humans were more than soldiers. They were guardians, moving with calm precision, moral clarity, and unstoppable purpose. Families whispered quietly, "They are here. They have come for us. We will survive." Officers nodded silently, understanding that the fleet outside was not just a shield, but a lesson in discipline, intelligence, and moral courage. The alien fleet's desperation escalated. Ships collided in confusion, engines flared and died mid-maneuver, and weapons jammed at the most critical moments. Officers barked frantic orders, but every attempt to regain control failed. Their pride had become panic, their arrogance dissolved into fear, and their once unshakable confidence was now shattered. Every subtle move of the human fleet continued to dismantle their authority and morale, demonstrating that raw power was meaningless against precision, patience, and moral certainty. Inside the colony, civilians pressed closer together, some crying quietly, others whispering names of heroes they would never meet. Children stared wide-eyed at the monitors, absorbing awe and hope in equal measure. Officers exhaled slowly, tears welling in their eyes, as they realized that humanity had arrived not only to defend but to teach a lesson. The weak are never abandoned when discipline, precision, and moral clarity guide action. Engineers maintained focus on shields and energy flows, knowing that the humans outside were orchestrating the battle like a master conductor, every movement purposeful, every interference calculated. Captain Vale observed the alien panic with quiet satisfaction. The humans had arrived, calm, precise, unstoppable, and moral. The colony would survive because humanity refused to leave anyone behind. Every subtle maneuver, every cloaked intervention, every calculated disruption was a message carried across the void. We are with you. You are not alone. We will protect you. The alien fleet had trespassed, believing abandonment equaled weakness, only to find the humans had turned inevitability, discipline, and moral clarity into weapons far stronger than firepower. Even as the battle continued, hope surged within the colony. Families whispered thanks, officers and engineers felt awe and pride, and children clutched their parents, realizing that humans had come to save them. Every subtle interference, every precise maneuver, every calm, controlled action of the human fleet conveyed a message louder than any weapon. Humanity protects the weak. Discipline, precision, and moral clarity dominate chaos, numbers, and arrogance. The aliens could panic, they could fail, but they could not erase the truth humanity had delivered. The void seemed alive with the presence of the human fleet. Engines glowed silently, hulls reflected starlight like mirrors of hope, and every subtle maneuver radiated authority. The aliens realized, too late, that no world could be abandoned as long as humans were willing to act with calm precision, discipline, and moral clarity. Every hesitation, every misstep, every failed weapon was proof of the humans' inevitability. Those left to die now found salvation, and the galaxy would remember this day. Humanity had arrived, and its lesson was clear. Precision, patience, and moral clarity are unstoppable. The alien fleet had lost all composure. What had begun as a confident, arrogant advance had descended into chaos and despair. Ships drifted uncontrollably, weapons misfired without warning, engines sputtered and failed mid-flight, and communications were a cacophony of frantic orders and panicked cries. Commanders cursed and shouted, but their commands were meaningless. Every assumption they had made about human weakness was shattered, replaced by fear, confusion, and disbelief. They had believed the humans would crumble under pressure, that isolation meant vulnerability. Now they realized they had been catastrophically wrong. Inside the human colony, hope surged like a tidal wave. Families clutched each other tightly, their eyes fixed on monitors that displayed the calm, precise movements of the approaching fleet. Children whispered prayers and names they barely understood, faces wide with awe. Parents pressed their children closer, some crying quietly, others whispering words of gratitude that sounded fragile even to themselves. Officers and engineers worked in tense synchronization, every action measured, every movement purposeful. The humans outside were not merely fighting. They were orchestrating an intricate ballet of precision and discipline that had become impossible for the aliens to counter. Every subtle interference, every cloaked maneuver, every decoy drone reinforced one unyielding truth: humanity would not abandon the weak. Captain Aaron Vale observed silently from the bridge of the flagship. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the storm of panic that gripped the alien fleet. He did not shout. He did not panic. Every order he gave was precise, calculated, and purposeful. Cloaked corvettes slipped behind enemy lines, intercepting critical targets without being seen. Drones led enemy vessels into traps and dead zones. Sensor anomalies caused alien ships to miscalculate trajectories, engines to stall, and weapons to jam. Every subtle maneuver dismantled the enemy's confidence, eroding their arrogance piece by piece. Vale's eyes, cold and focused, betrayed only the deep satisfaction of witnessing a flawless strategy executed with precision and moral clarity. The alien fleet tried to strike back, but their efforts were futile. Plasma cannons flared uselessly, torpedoes missed by meters, and formations that had been flawless moments ago collapsed into chaos. Pilots screamed into their communication channels, cursing the failure of technology and the unpredictability of human tactics. Officers barked frantic orders, but nothing could restore control. Every subtle action by the human fleet seemed to anticipate their every move, every hesitation amplified into failure. The humans had arrived not to simply defend. They had arrived to dominate the battlefield with intellect, patience, and moral authority. Within the colony, emotions ran high. Civilians pressed together, some shaking with fear, others with tears of relief. Children held their parents' hands tightly, whispering words of awe. Officers wiped their brows and eyes, feeling the weight of survival after years of expecting abandonment. Engineers monitored systems, adjusting energy flows to maintain shields and critical power nodes, understanding that every subtle move of the human fleet outside dictated their very survival. Every display of human precision was more than strategy, it was a moral declaration. Humanity had arrived to protect the helpless, and they would not falter. The alien fleet's panic deepened. Ships collided in blind confusion. Engines failed mid-maneuver. Weapons jammed repeatedly. Officers barked orders, but chaos had overtaken control. Their once unshakable pride had dissolved into terror and despair. Every subtle movement of the human fleet, executed without panic, without hesitation, without excess, dismantled their authority completely. The humans had turned discipline, patience, and moral clarity into a weapon far stronger than numbers or firepower. They did not need to strike with full force. The precision alone shattered confidence, destroyed formations, and ensured survival for the colony. Commander Hayes felt tears well in her eyes as she watched the screens. Hope, fragile yet undeniable, surged inside her. Years of preparing for the worst, years of expecting abandonment, were washed away in moments of awe and gratitude. Families whispered prayers of thanks. Children clutched their parents with wide eyes. Officers nodded silently, understanding the unspoken truth. The humans outside were not just fighting. They were saving, protecting, and teaching a lesson in calm, precise moral power. Every subtle move of the fleet, every cloaked strike, every decoy and interference communicated the same message. We are with you. You are not alone. Humanity will protect the weak. The alien fleet struggled to regroup. Commanders attempted coordinated attacks, adjusting formation and targeting priorities, but the humans anticipated every move. Cloaked vessels struck at key systems, decoy drones guided enemy ships into traps, and subtle manipulations of energy fields caused shields and engines to fail unpredictably. Panic spread like wildfire through every vessel, amplifying errors and accelerating collapse. Arrogance had become despair, overconfidence had become chaos, and every subtle movement of the human fleet emphasized the inevitability of failure for the invaders. Inside the colony, civilians whispered and clutched each other, hearts pounding in time with the distant flashes of the human fleet. Officers stood taller, a mixture of awe and pride in their expressions. Engineers adjusted energy flows to maintain life and safety systems, knowing that the humans outside were dictating the battle with silent precision. Children pressed their faces to the monitors, feeling awe, fear, and hope in equal measure. Humanity had arrived. They were precise, disciplined, moral, unstoppable. The weak would not be left behind. The galaxy would witness it, and the lesson was already written across the void. Captain Vale's voice echoed calmly through the flagship's comms. Observe, predict, intervene only where necessary. Let hesitation control them. Every error they make strengthens us. His officers moved like extensions of his command, executing maneuvers with perfection. Cloaked corvettes struck unseen. Drones intercepted enemy patrols. Sensor manipulations created confusion across the alien fleet. Every subtle interference was a message louder than any weapon. Humanity does not abandon. Humanity acts with precision, patience, and moral clarity. The alien fleet's collapse accelerated. Engines failed, shields collapsed, weapons jammed, and formations disintegrated. Officers shouted, cursing the failure of their technology and the unpredictability of the humans. Pilots panicked, spinning helplessly through space. Every subtle human maneuver continued to dismantle their confidence. They had trespassed into human space assuming weakness, and they had been wrong. Every subtle action, every interference, every calm, deliberate move of the human fleet highlighted the truth. Humans are unstoppable when united, precise, and morally certain. Within the colony, hope became stronger. Civilians pressed together. Children whispered in awe. Officers and engineers wiped tears from their eyes. The humans outside were not just defending. They were teaching a lesson, asserting moral clarity and precision in a galaxy that had left them behind. Every subtle maneuver was a promise. The weak will never be abandoned. Humanity had arrived. Discipline, patience, and moral clarity dominated chaos, arrogance, and panic. The alien fleet could not comprehend it. The galaxy would remember it. Every survivor in the colony would remember it. Humanity had arrived, unstoppable, precise, and moral. Those left to die were no longer alone. The void itself seemed to pulse with the presence of the human fleet. Engines glowed silently. Hulls reflected starlight. Every subtle maneuver radiated authority, precision, and moral certainty. The aliens had trespassed, assuming abandonment meant weakness. Instead, they faced inevitability, discipline, and moral clarity that they could neither comprehend nor resist. Every hesitation, every misstep, every failed weapon proved humanity's dominance. Salvation had arrived for the colony, and the galaxy would witness the lesson. Precision, patience, and moral clarity are unstoppable when humanity acts. The alien fleet was in complete disarray. What had started as arrogance had transformed into sheer panic. Ships collided in the void, weapons jammed at critical moments, and engines failed mid-maneuver. Communication lines were cut, and officers shouted into silence. Every calculation they had made about human weakness proved disastrously wrong. The humans outside were not just defending. They were orchestrating a battlefield with moral precision, patience, and strategy that was impossible to counter. Every subtle movement, every cloaked corvette slipping behind enemy lines. Every interference with sensors dismantled their confidence. The aliens realized, too late, that they were outmatched in ways they could not even begin to understand. Inside the colony, civilians pressed together, trembling yet mesmerized. Children clutched their parents' hands, eyes wide, watching monitors display the calm, unstoppable human fleet that moved like a single entity. Families whispered words of awe and hope, voices trembling with gratitude. Officers wiped sweat and tears from their faces, understanding that humanity had arrived to protect them, to save them from a fate they had believed inevitable. Engineers worked with meticulous care, ensuring that shields and life support systems held, aware that every subtle move of the human fleet outside was guiding the battle in the colony's favor. Every flicker on the monitor, every sudden blip, every careful interference of the human fleet carried one clear message. We are with you. You will not be abandoned. Captain Aaron Vale observed silently from the bridge, eyes cold yet filled with quiet satisfaction. The humans were precise, disciplined, unstoppable, and morally resolute. Cloaked corvettes intercepted enemy patrols, decoy drones led alien ships into traps, and subtle energy manipulations caused engines and weapons to fail unpredictably. Every maneuver was deliberate, every interference calculated. Vale's calm voice carried over the communication channels. Do not strike recklessly. Observe, anticipate, and let hesitation control them. Every mistake they make strengthens us. His officers executed these instructions flawlessly, the calm precision of humanity in stark contrast to the chaos consuming the alien fleet. The aliens struggled desperately to regain control. Weapons flared and misfired. Engines stalled. Formations dissolved. Officers barked frantic orders, but the human maneuvers anticipated each desperate attempt. The once powerful fleet, confident in its numbers and technology, had become a tangle of confusion, fear, and failure. Every subtle action by the human fleet intensified the panic, dismantled the arrogance, and demonstrated that morality, discipline, and precision could dominate even the most overwhelming force. Within the colony, civilians whispered prayers of gratitude, holding each other close. Children pressed their faces to monitors, absorbing hope and awe in equal measure. Officers and engineers worked with quiet determination, hearts pounding but minds focused. Every subtle movement of the fleet outside reinforced the lesson they would never forget. The weak are never abandoned when humanity moves with precision, patience, and moral clarity. The humans outside were not merely a fleet. They were guardians, saviors, and teachers of discipline and inevitability. The alien fleet's panic deepened. Ships collided repeatedly, engines failed mid-flight, and weapons jammed without warning. Officers screamed, cursed, and barked orders, but the chaos was unstoppable. Every subtle maneuver of the human fleet anticipated their desperation, dismantling formations before they could even attempt retaliation. The aliens had trespassed into human space, believing weakness lay in abandonment. Instead, they faced inevitability, moral clarity, and precision they could not counter. Commander Hayes stood in the colony's command center, tears streaking her face. She pressed her hands to her mouth, watching civilians clutch each other, officers stand straighter, and children whisper in awe. Humanity had arrived not just to defend, but to assert a presence that was calm, precise, and unstoppable. Every cloaked ship, every interference with alien systems, every perfectly timed maneuver carried the message. You are not alone. We are with you. You will survive. The galaxy had abandoned them, but humanity had not. Outside, the human fleet moved like a single organism, each ship aware of the other's actions, every maneuver executed with flawless precision. Cloaked corvettes struck at weak points, drones misled alien formations into traps, and energy pulses disrupted engines and weapons with surgical timing. Every subtle action reinforced the humans' dominance and moral authority. The aliens had underestimated them, and that mistake was fatal. Panic spread across their fleet, confidence crumbled, and every effort to regain control ended in failure. Inside the colony, hope became tangible. Families whispered words of awe, children's eyes sparkled with wonder, and officers and engineers felt pride and relief. Humanity had arrived to save them, and the lesson was clear. Discipline, precision, and moral clarity could overcome even overwhelming force. Every subtle movement outside carried a message louder than weapons, louder than explosions. The weak will never be left behind. Captain Vale's voice rang calmly through the flagship. Observe, predict, intervene only when necessary. Let hesitation control them. Every mistake they make strengthens us. Every subtle maneuver is a statement. We protect the helpless. We act with precision, patience, and moral clarity. His officers executed his words perfectly. Cloaked corvettes intercepted critical enemy patrols. Decoy drones guided alien ships into blind zones, and sensor manipulations caused misfires and engine failures. Every subtle move dismantled the alien fleet further, leaving them powerless to act effectively. The alien fleet was collapsing. Ships spun helplessly in space. Engines failed, weapons jammed, and officers shouted into silence. Every attempt to regroup was anticipated and countered with calm, precise strategy. The humans had not just arrived. They had dominated the battlefield with intellect, discipline, and moral clarity. The weak were protected, the arrogant humbled, and the galaxy's assumptions about human weakness lay in ruins. Inside the colony, civilians clutched each other tightly, tears streaking faces, hearts pounding with hope. Children whispered names they barely understood, eyes wide with awe. Officers nodded silently, engineers adjusted shields and power, and every person understood one undeniable truth. Humanity had arrived to save them, to teach, to protect, and to assert that moral clarity, precision, and discipline are unstoppable. Every subtle movement of the fleet outside communicated the same message. We are with you. You are not abandoned. You will survive. The void pulsed with the presence of the human fleet. Engines glowed silently, hulls reflected starlight, and every subtle maneuver radiated authority, precision, and moral certainty. The aliens had trespassed, expecting weakness and abandonment, only to face inevitability, discipline, and morality they could neither resist nor comprehend. Every hesitation, every misstep, every failed weapon proved humanity's dominance. The colony would survive, the galaxy would remember, and those left to die were no longer alone. Humanity had arrived, unstoppable, precise, and morally certain. The alien fleet's panic had reached a new level. Ships spun uncontrollably, engines failed mid-burn, and weapons flared without warning. Officers screamed into silence, cursing the unpredictable humans outside. Every attempt to regroup ended in disaster. Every move the aliens made was anticipated, countered, and dismantled with surgical precision. Cloaked human corvettes slipped through the void, unseen and unstoppable, striking at critical engines, disabling weapon systems, and scattering patrols. Decoy drones lured entire squadrons into traps, creating confusion that spread like wildfire through the alien ranks. Every subtle interference, every slight disruption, every perfectly timed maneuver reinforced a single, undeniable truth. The humans outside were unstoppable, precise, and morally unshakable. Inside the colony, the air was thick with tension and awe. Civilians clutched one another, hearts hammering, eyes wide as monitors displayed the human fleet moving like a single living organism. Children pressed their faces against parents' shoulders, whispering names they barely understood, and murmuring prayers for the humans who had come for them. Officers and engineers wiped sweat and tears from their faces, understanding that the humans outside were not simply fighting. They were defending, teaching, and protecting with calculated precision and moral clarity. Every ship that slipped past the alien sensors, every cloaked corvette that struck unseen, every drone that misled the enemy carried one message louder than any weapon. We are with you. You are not alone. You will survive. Captain Aaron Vale stood silently on the bridge of the flagship, calm yet intensely focused. His eyes scanned the void, noting every subtle movement, every interference, every moment where humans turned hesitation into weaponry. Orders flowed calmly from his lips. Observe, anticipate, intervene only when necessary. Let hesitation control them. Every error they make strengthens us. Every subtle action is a declaration. The weak will not be abandoned. Officers executed his words flawlessly. Cloaked corvettes struck enemy patrols undetected. Decoy drones guided alien ships into voids where their weapons failed. Energy pulses disrupted engines and shields unpredictably, dismantling confidence and morale. The alien fleet's arrogance had dissolved entirely, replaced by confusion and fear. Officers screamed, pilots panicked, and formations collapsed into chaos. Every subtle move of the human fleet anticipated desperation and turned it into a weapon. Ships collided, engines flared and failed, weapons jammed mid-firing, and alien pride crumbled under the weight of moral clarity and strategic precision. The humans outside were not merely defenders. They were unstoppable forces of inevitability, discipline, and moral authority. Within the colony, hope became almost tangible. Civilians whispered prayers, children pressed against their parents, and officers nodded quietly, understanding that humanity had arrived to protect them, to save them from a fate they had believed inevitable. Engineers adjusted shields and energy conduits with meticulous care, aware that the fleet outside dictated every second of survival. The humans had arrived not to dominate for pride, not to strike recklessly, but to teach the galaxy a lesson. Precision, patience, and moral clarity are forces no arrogance can overcome. The alien fleet's desperation escalated further. Ships collided repeatedly, engines faltered mid-burn, and weapons flared uselessly. Officers shouted orders, but the chaos had grown too great. Every subtle human maneuver countered, anticipated, and dismantled their attempts at control. Cloaked ships struck critical systems, decoy drones led patrols into traps, and energy pulses caused misfires, engine stalls, and shield collapses. The humans outside were not merely surviving, they were dominating with calm inevitability, turning discipline and moral clarity into weapons more lethal than firepower. Captain Vale's voice resonated calmly over the comms. Observe, predict, intervene only when necessary. Let hesitation control them. Every subtle move strengthens us. Every calculated interference is a message. Humanity protects the weak, acts with precision, and dominates with moral clarity. Officers executed his orders with flawless timing. Every maneuver reinforced the lesson. Arrogance and brute force are meaningless against discipline, strategy, and morality. Inside the colony, civilians pressed close together, tears streaming down faces, hearts pounding with awe and relief. Children whispered names of heroes they could barely imagine, eyes wide with wonder. Officers and engineers felt pride, relief, and reverence. Humanity had arrived to save them, and every subtle maneuver of the fleet outside spoke louder than any cannon, louder than any explosion. You are not abandoned. You will survive. Humanity will act with precision, patience, and moral certainty. The alien fleet tried again, forming tighter formations, attempting coordinated strikes, but every move was anticipated. Cloaked corvettes struck silently, decoy drones misled entire squadrons, and subtle energy pulses disrupted engines and shields with perfect timing. Every hesitation the aliens displayed became a weapon in human hands, dismantling confidence and morale further. Arrogance had become fear. Pride had become chaos. The humans had turned discipline, precision, and moral clarity into unstoppable forces. The void itself seemed to pulse with the presence of the human fleet. Engines glowed silently, hulls reflected starlight, and every subtle maneuver radiated authority and inevitability. The aliens had trespassed into human space expecting weakness, abandonment, and failure. Instead, they faced inevitability, moral clarity, and disciplined precision they could not resist. Every misstep, every hesitation, every failure of technology proved the humans' dominance. The colony would survive. The galaxy would witness. Those left to die were no longer alone. Humanity had arrived, unstoppable, precise, and morally certain. Civilians whispered in awe. Children clung to parents. Officers exhaled quietly. Engineers worked with trembling hands. The humans outside were not just fighting, they were protecting, teaching, and asserting the truth of humanity's moral clarity. Every subtle move was a message. The weak will never be abandoned. Arrogance will always falter in the face of discipline, precision, and moral certainty. The lesson spread through the void like fire. Humanity acts. Humanity protects. Humanity is unstoppable. The alien fleet's destruction had become inevitable. Their confidence had vanished, replaced by sheer panic. Ships spun uncontrollably in the void. Engines flared and died mid-burn, and weapons fired aimlessly, often hitting nothing. Officers barked frantic orders, trying to salvage some control, but the human fleet outside anticipated every desperate move. Every subtle maneuver dismantled formations, disrupted engines, and jammed weapons. The aliens had trespassed into human space, believing weakness and abandonment, and now they faced moral clarity, precision, and inevitability they could neither resist nor comprehend. Inside the colony, emotions reached a fever pitch. Civilians clutched one another, hearts pounding, eyes wide with awe. Children pressed against parents, whispering names they barely understood, while adults whispered prayers of gratitude. Officers and engineers moved with steady purpose, even as tears streaked their faces. Every subtle movement of the human fleet outside was a message louder than any cannon or explosion. We are here. You will survive. You are not abandoned. For years, the colony had feared isolation, believed the galaxy had forgotten them. But now they saw a truth they had only dared to hope for. Humanity never leaves the weak behind. Captain Aaron Vale observed from the bridge of the flagship, calm yet resolute. His eyes scanned the void, noting every subtle movement, every interference, every hesitation of the aliens. Orders flowed quietly but precisely. Anticipate, observe, intervene only when necessary. Let hesitation and fear control them. Every error strengthens us. Cloaked corvettes slipped past alien sensors, striking critical systems undetected. Decoy drones led entire squadrons into traps. Energy pulses disrupted engines and shields with perfect timing. Every subtle action dismantled confidence and instilled fear. The humans were not only defending, they were dominating, teaching, and asserting the moral authority that had been denied them for so long. The aliens' arrogance had been destroyed completely. Officers screamed, pilots panicked, and ships collided helplessly in the void. Every formation they attempted dissolved into chaos. Every maneuver was anticipated and neutralized by the precise, patient, and unstoppable human fleet. Arrogance had turned to fear, pride to despair, and every failed weapon and misfired engine was proof of humanity's superior strategy. The humans had arrived not just to fight, but to teach the galaxy a lesson. Discipline, patience, and moral clarity are forces that no numbers or firepower can overcome. Within the colony, hope and awe mingled with tears and relief. Families pressed together, children's eyes glimmered with wonder, and officers and engineers felt pride swelling in their chests. Every subtle move of the human fleet outside reinforced the truth they had only dared whisper. Humanity protects the weak. Humanity acts with precision, patience, and moral certainty. Every cloaked corvette, every decoy drone, every energy interference was a statement, not of aggression, but of inevitability and protection. The humans outside were unstoppable, and every soul in the colony felt it deeply. The alien fleet struggled to regain control, but their efforts were futile. Ships collided repeatedly, engines failed mid-maneuver, and weapons flared uselessly. Officers barked frantic orders, but chaos had overtaken command. Cloaked human vessels struck silently at weak points, decoy drones guided enemy patrols into traps, and subtle manipulations of energy fields caused engines and weapons to fail unpredictably. Every hesitation, every miscalculation, every failed technology reinforced the humans' dominance. The aliens realized, too late, that they had underestimated a power that was not just military. It was moral, strategic, and inevitable. Captain Vale's voice echoed through the flagship, calm and resolute. Observe, predict, intervene only when necessary. Let hesitation control them. Every subtle maneuver strengthens us. Every action carries the message. Humanity protects the weak, acts with precision, and dominates with moral clarity. Officers executed his orders with flawless timing. Every cloaked corvette intercepted patrols unseen. Every decoy drone guided enemy squadrons into traps. Every subtle energy interference caused disruption and fear. The humans had turned discipline, patience, and moral clarity into weapons far stronger than firepower. Inside the colony, civilians pressed together, tears streaming, hearts racing. Children whispered names of heroes, eyes wide with awe. Officers and engineers felt relief, pride, and wonder. Humanity had arrived not to dominate for pride, but to protect, to assert that the weak would never be abandoned. Every subtle maneuver outside carried the same lesson. You are not alone. Humanity acts with precision, patience, and moral certainty. The alien fleet's panic grew uncontrollable. Ships flared, collided, and tumbled helplessly through space. Officers shouted futile commands. Pilots panicked, realizing that every attempt to regroup was anticipated and dismantled. The humans outside had turned hesitation into a weapon, arrogance into vulnerability, and fear into a tool of precision. Every subtle maneuver dismantled enemy morale and confidence, proving that moral clarity and discipline are unstoppable forces. Within the colony, hope became stronger. Families clutched one another. Children whispered prayers. Officers and engineers exhaled in relief. Humanity had arrived to save them, not just with power, but with patience, precision, and moral certainty. Every cloaked strike, every interference, every decoy was a lesson and a promise. The weak will never be abandoned. Arrogance will crumble. Humanity will act. The void pulsed with the presence of the human fleet. Engines glowed silently. Hulls reflected distant starlight. Every subtle maneuver radiated authority, precision, and moral clarity. The alien fleet, trespassing into human space, faced inevitability they could not resist. Every hesitation, every misstep, every failed weapon proved the humans' dominance. Civilians and officers alike understood it in their hearts. Those left to die were no longer alone. Humanity had arrived, unstoppable, precise, and morally certain. The colony's command center filled with whispered awe. Children clung to parents. Officers exhaled quietly. Engineers worked with trembling hands. The humans outside were not just fighting. They were protecting, teaching, and asserting the unshakable truth of moral clarity, discipline, and inevitability. Every subtle movement, every cloaked strike, every interference spoke a single message. We are with you. You will survive. Humanity acts with precision, patience, and moral certainty. The alien fleet had lost all semblance of order. Ships collided endlessly. Engines flared and died mid-burn. Weapons misfired or jammed completely. And officers shouted commands into a void that no longer obeyed them. Panic rippled across every bridge, every command center, and every control station. Their confidence, once unshakable, had crumbled under the precision and moral authority of humanity. Every maneuver the humans executed was calculated, deliberate, and devastating in its subtlety. Cloaked corvettes struck unseen at critical systems, decoy drones led entire squadrons into traps, and energy pulses caused shields and engines to fail unpredictably. The aliens were caught in a web of inevitability they could not escape, and every desperate move only tightened the grip of human strategy. Inside the human colony, civilians pressed together, hearts racing, eyes wide with awe and hope. Children clutched their parents' hands, whispering names they barely knew, while adults murmured prayers of gratitude and relief. Officers and engineers exhaled, wiping sweat and tears from their faces, understanding that humanity had not merely arrived to fight. They had arrived to protect, to teach, and to assert moral clarity in a galaxy that had abandoned them. Every subtle movement of the human fleet outside carried a message that was louder than any weapon. You are not alone. You will survive. Humanity acts with precision, patience, and moral certainty. Captain Aaron Vale stood calmly on the bridge of the flagship, eyes scanning the void with unblinking focus. Orders flowed from his lips like water, measured and deliberate. Observe, anticipate, intervene only when necessary. Every hesitation, every error, every panic-stricken movement strengthens us. Let the arrogant falter under the weight of inevitability. Every subtle action is a statement. Humanity protects the weak, asserts moral clarity, and dominates with precision. Cloaked corvettes intercepted patrols, decoy drones manipulated enemy formations, and energy pulses disrupted engines and weapons. Every subtle interference dismantled the alien fleet's confidence, turning arrogance into fear, pride into chaos. The aliens realized too late that they had underestimated humanity. Every prediction they had made about human weakness had failed. Every assumption had been wrong. Their ships, their formations, their technology, even their strategy, nothing could match the precision, patience, and moral clarity of the humans who had come to protect the weak. Officers screamed orders, pilots panicked, and entire squadrons were disabled before they could react. The alien fleet, once thought unstoppable, was collapsing under the weight of inevitability. Inside the colony, hope reached a fever pitch. Families pressed together, children's eyes glimmered with wonder, and officers and engineers felt pride and relief in equal measure. The humans outside were not merely fighting. They were teaching, protecting, and asserting a principle that no alien arrogance could challenge. The weak are never abandoned. The moral, disciplined, and precise will always prevail. Every cloaked ship, every decoy drone, every subtle energy interference reinforced this truth. The humans had arrived not for revenge, not for pride, but to protect, to correct, and to assert that discipline and moral clarity were forces more powerful than firepower. The alien fleet tried one final coordinated assault, desperate to regain control. Ships surged forward, weapons blazing, engines burning at full capacity. Officers barked frantic commands, hoping to reclaim order. But every move was anticipated. Every formation was dismantled before it could act. Cloaked human corvettes struck at command ships undetected. Decoy drones lured squadrons into blind zones, and energy pulses disabled weapons mid-firing. Panic had become the only rhythm of the alien fleet, and every desperate attempt only highlighted their helplessness. The humans had turned hesitation into a weapon, arrogance into vulnerability, and fear into a tool of unstoppable precision. Captain Vale's voice remained calm, steady, and resolute over the comms. Observe, predict, intervene when necessary. Let hesitation control them. Every subtle move strengthens us. Every calculated interference is a declaration. Humanity protects the weak, dominates with precision, and acts with moral certainty. Officers executed his words flawlessly. Every cloaked corvette intercepted patrols unseen. Every decoy drone misled enemy formations. Every subtle energy pulse caused disruption and fear. Humanity had become the embodiment of inevitability, precision, and moral clarity. Inside the colony, civilians pressed together, tears streaming, hearts pounding. Children whispered names of heroes they could barely imagine, and adults whispered thanks for the arrival of humans who had come to save them. Officers and engineers moved with quiet determination, understanding the subtlety of every action of the fleet outside. Humanity had arrived to protect, to teach, and to assert that discipline, patience, and moral clarity were forces unstoppable by arrogance or numbers. Every subtle move, every cloaked strike, every interference carried the same powerful message. We are with you. You will survive. Humanity acts with precision, patience, and moral certainty. The alien fleet's collapse accelerated. Ships collided repeatedly, engines flared and died, and weapons jammed in mid-firing. Officers shouted futile commands, pilots panicked, and formations dissolved into chaos. Every hesitation, every misstep, every failure reinforced the dominance of the humans outside. Cloaked corvettes struck silently at command and control ships. Decoy drones manipulated entire squadrons into traps. Energy pulses disrupted shields and engines unpredictably. Every subtle maneuver dismantled morale, confidence, and hope in the aliens. Humanity had turned moral clarity, patience, and precision into weapons more lethal than firepower. The colony exhaled as one. Tears streamed freely, children clutched parents, officers nodded silently, and engineers exhaled in relief. Humanity had arrived to save them, not with reckless aggression, but with precision, patience, and moral certainty. Every subtle strike, every interference, every calculated maneuver carried the undeniable message: the weak are never abandoned. Arrogance crumbles. Discipline and moral clarity dominate. Humanity protects, acts, and endures. The void itself seemed to pulse with the presence of the human fleet. Engines glowed silently, hulls reflected distant starlight, and every subtle maneuver radiated authority, precision, and moral certainty. The alien fleet, trespassing into human space, faced inevitability, discipline, and moral authority they could neither resist nor comprehend. Every hesitation, misstep, and failed technology was proof that humanity's dominance was absolute. The colony would survive. The galaxy would witness. Those left to die were no longer abandoned. Humanity had arrived, unstoppable, precise, and morally certain. The battle was over, but the silence that followed felt heavier than the war itself. Wreckage drifted slowly through space, broken alien warships turning into cold metal graves, while damaged human ships held position like tired guardians who refused to leave. On the surface of the colony world, fires still burned, cities were wounded, and the people stood in shock, unable to fully believe they were still alive. Human soldiers moved through the ruins, helping the injured, lifting trapped civilians, sharing water, food, and quiet words of comfort. They did not act like conquerors. They acted like family. Mothers held children who had survived. Elders looked up at the sky with tears in their eyes, seeing human ships still there, still watching, still protecting. For the first time in many years, the colony felt safe. In orbit, the human flagship opened a system-wide channel not only to the colony, but to every listening post, every alien council world, every neutral system that had watched and done nothing. The signal was clear, strong, and calm. A human admiral spoke, not with anger, but with unbreakable resolve. He said the galaxy had made a choice when it turned away from helpless people, when it decided that profit, fear, and silence were more important than life. He said humanity had made a different choice. Humanity chose to stand. Humanity chose to answer calls for help, even when the cost was high. Humanity chose to fight, not for power, not for territory, but for those who were left to die. As he spoke, images were transmitted across the stars, human medics treating alien civilians who had been abandoned by their own fleets, human engineers repairing colony shields, human soldiers standing guard without helmets so people could see their faces. The message shook the galaxy more than any weapon ever could. Alien leaders who had ordered the attack watched in fear as their own people questioned them. Neutral worlds that had stayed silent felt shame burn deep inside. Smaller species, long oppressed and ignored, felt something new rise in their hearts. Hope. The Admiral's voice did not rise, but every word carried weight. He said this was not the end, but the beginning. Humanity would not rule the galaxy, but it would not allow cruelty to rule it either. Any world under threat could send a signal and humans would listen. Any fleet that hunted the weak would face resistance. Then the final words were spoken, words that echoed into history. Humanity does not abandon its own, and it does not abandon those who stand beside it. We are with you. Across the colony, people fell to their knees, crying openly. Across the galaxy, messages began to flood human channels. Thanks, apologies, promises of alliance, pleas for protection. Even former enemies sent silence, afraid to speak, but unable to forget what they had witnessed. As human ships slowly moved into defensive formation around the colony, stars reflected off their hulls like burning vows. The galaxy had tried to erase a small world. Instead, it had awakened something far greater. From that day forward, whenever darkness closed in, Whenever hope seemed lost, worlds would remember this moment. They would remember the sound of human engines howling through the void. They would remember the message that changed everything. And they would know, without doubt, that when all others turned away, humanity stood firm and said, "We are with you."